All right. So we're doing a quick hit of an article we came across that goes back to one of our previous episodes. So here's the title of this article. Video gamer Electronic Arts to be bought in largest ever private equity buyout valued at 55 billion with a B.
With a B.
Is like that
Yes.
sounds like a lot to me. Is this a lot of money we're talking about in PE land?
It's a big one. It's a big one.
It's a
You
lot
got
of
some
money.
big hitters at the table buying that company.
Someone break this down. Give me like the little primer overview of what this is.
Well, EA Sports, I think a lot of people know they're a gaming company, and they've continued to evolve their business over the years into more sort of live experience. What is it? Game sports or electronic sports. That's like becoming a really big industry, and their stock had actually been doing pretty well over the last year. I think it's outpaced the S&P 500 by like 15% or something significant like that. So it's a business that has been doing well, but also ripe for some private company takeover. So they decided to sell to a consortium of private equity buyers. Most significantly is kind of been in the news. The Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia is an investor, and they've been an investor up to this point. They've been almost a 10% stakeholder, but they've increased their position. And Silver Lake Partners, another really big PE group that is big in tech and gaming as well. And last but not least, Jared Kushner's private equity fund, son-in-law of POTUS. They're in the mix too. Probably some others as well.
And just like as a reminder for people, leverage buyout. Can someone just like briefly summarize?
Ed, you take that one.
Yeah. So leverage buyout essentially says it's when you buy a house, you're doing a leverage buyout. Essentially, you're saying, okay, my house is going to cost $500,000. I'm going to put $250,000 down and borrow $250,000. That's all. That's leverage. That's the debt. And so a leverage buyout like this would be a situation where they go, the purchase price might be 55 billion, and they're going to put 11 billion down in cash and borrow the remaining $44 billion in a series of bonds or private placements, so that way they can pay that off over time with the cash flow from the business.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, in this case, they went a little bit heavier on the leverage. They went 36 billion in equity, most of which funded at close, and 19 billion in debt provided by JP Morgan Chase. So you think about that as like you're leveraging, 34% of the purchase price is funded by debt.
Just for reference, like what's average? What's an average percentage?
What I've seen on the tech-enabled services side has generally been closer to what Rory just said. About a third to 40% might be debt, and the rest of it's going to be equity, because you still need, and this is, I think, going to be one of the challenges with this investment. Not only is it large, but you still need cash flow to reinvest in product, because technology goes stale very quickly.
Yeah, that's right.
So you're going to continuously need cash flow that, with a RJR Nabisco, let's say, when they went private on a leverage buyout back 40 years ago, they were just cash flow rich, and they use that to pay the debt service. Something like EA, they're going to have to reinvest in new products.
Why did they do this?
Variety of different reasons. I think, some of the things I've read has been around, when you take yourself out of the public sphere, you're less managing quarter to quarter. You're able to, have a bit longer term vision, presumably more patient capital, if you will. And, their model is changing. And so there is a lot more product development to be had, and some of that has longer time horizons on it. And so, the other element too is, from a buyer standpoint, they paid a 25% premium on the stock price per share. But if you look at the information, there's even more upside, they believe. So purely a really good financial play. And, what I've read as well about EA Sports is their revenue mix has moved more towards reoccurring, which, kind of what Ed would kind of agree with here is that kind of a revenue mix allows you to take on more debt. It's more predictable, less seasonal, so you can support more debt, basically return higher value to your equity shareholder.
So are Saudis like big gamers, or did I miss something? What is happening?
Well, what I don't pretend to be a geopolitical expert or, foreign investment expert, but what is a fact is that, Middle Eastern kingdoms and countries and governments and um, sovereign wealth funds have really got involved in sports
Huh.
investing, and among other things, of course. I mean, not just sports, but some of the more higher profile investments in like F1
Mm,
and uh, football teams, and
Golf.
just all sorts golf. Yeah, they basically
that's right.
staked the entire
Right.
live golf experience to mix results. But esports is considered a sport in a lot of places, and EA Sports themselves are going deeper into this world. So, if you're really bullish on sports in general and in any form globally, I think that's a big part of it. Yeah, makes a lot of sense, presumably.
Yeah, and I think the other part is these petro empires, Saudis, even like Norway, are looking at a time horizon which is somewhat finite for the ability to really capitalize on their their petrochemical income.
Yeah.
And so they're also looking for ways to diversify from a national
Mm.
perspective so that way their societies can continue to flourish after oil may, decline in importance and in price.
Wow. So we're talking like a diversification of natural resources, long term. We're talking about.
Yeah, certainly a diversification from the standpoint of, what is it going to take for this country to continue to be economically successful, at which time 100 to 200 years from now, maybe that
Yeah.
oil is no longer driving our underpinned economy. And so they're looking at, okay, can I make long-term investments to really secure the future of my country, which has largely been based upon oil revenues?
So, so is one way to interpret that that yeah, Rory's dog is not happy about this deal. Um, I have questions as well. I have questions as well. One is like,
Actually, very happy. It's cheering
happy,
cheering this
happy
deal
barking.
on. Yeah.
Um, are they betting that like gaming is going to be around for 200 years, or is that just like the dividend, like the results revenue we're going to get from that are going to set us up so well for the next 200?
Well, I think it's just the strategy of moving away from, really a singular source of income, not singular, but a very significant source, into just different
Okay.
types of investments. Make no mistake, this is a private equity investment. So as we've talked about, private equity doesn't mate for life.
Mm.
So this will either be re-IPO'd eventually or sold again or what have you. It's not like a hold for the lifetime type of deal, because you know, uh, I say, generally any private equity group has LPs they need to answer to. So, whether that applies specific, I don't know. Maybe there's like a different view from the Saudi PIF versus like Silver Lake, for example. But eventually these deals are
Who are the
liquidated.
LPs in this situation?
Mm. Well, I mean, each different investor has maybe some of the same LPs, but they have their own LPs. So, like if you talk about Silver Lake, it's going to be probably your pension funds, endowments, insurance companies, really big institutional investors. And as far as like the Saudi PIF, boy, I think that's from the royal family
Well,
for the most
because in
part. I mean,
previously you said that like, hey, the LPs could be a sovereign wealth fund such as Saudi Arabia. And in this case, are
yeah,
they acting as
yeah,
both or is it separate entities?
hmm. Could be. I don't know a ton about the sovereign wealth fund space. It's really intriguing, actually.
Yeah, a lot of times the sovereign wealth funds do kind of two things. They serve similar roles to like a college endowment,
Yeah,
where they've got a perpetual life or an expected perpetual life, and a portion of the proceeds are spent every year. Let's call it 3%, 4% of the total balance is spent every year and diverted back into the government's usually the government's budget. And so what that allows the government to do is obviously either do more or tax less or both. And so so there you think about a sovereign wealth fund really as like a college endowment, which is why the private equity angle is consistent with kind of that long term. We don't need immediate liquidity. We could put a chunk of our money into these private equity type investments, run it for the long haul, and then be able to cash out because we have other diversified investments, just like a college endowment would, that allows the sovereign wealth fund to get its cash needs met, which are only 3 to 5% of the principal amount, the corpus amount every year.
So I have a double-barreled question. So what do you think the play is from this PE group? Like, what do you think they want to do to get their return out of EA? And then do you think we're going to see more of these big mega PE deals?
I'll answer the second question first. Yes, I think you're going to see more of these types of deals in the future. Almost definitely. Yeah. Yeah. No question about it.
And I actually question whether, but again, every time I question one of these, I lose because I wonder why people pay as much as they do. But this is one where I don't know as if I see, normally private equity is looking for a 15, 20% return on equity on an annualized basis, over a 5-year time horizon at doubling. And I just feel challenged to see how that works in this particular investment. Now, again, it may be when they throw the leverage on, but it's not heavily leveraged, as Rory noted. And when they look at, well, you've got a group of folks coming up that, might be more into gaming. But what I see from a demographics perspective is you have an emerging world that, is growing, but the Western world, the kind of northern hemisphere, is not really growing that fast. What we are seeing over the next 5 to 10 years is actually kind of another decline in teenage populations. We saw that certainly when I was in the university setting, saw that we expected lower enrollments because you had lower graduating cohorts. So I don't know where the growth is going to come from. And so as a result, it may be some financial engineering that they're hoping for. They could put a lot of money to work and get a reasonably decent 10, 12% return. But I actually don't see what the rationale was for it, other than it's kind of a sexy investment with
I was going to ask, is it for the splash? Like, this is a news article. Like, is it for this is the biggest
I
deal?
think it's got a few different motivations. I think there's a lot of money to put to work with some of these sovereign wealth funds and other private equity funds that who knows what kind of co-investment deal they have amongst one another. Don't know. To be determined on that. More information will probably come out on that. But I would say that there's probably some view that there will be growth, whether that comes from additional acquisition, consolidations, some heavy growth organically, to be determined. But I do know that, if you looked at this stock, it had been trending up for some time and outpacing the general market. So I think, some of the things I've read about it is, yes, they paid 25% premium on the stock price, but, some would even argue it's maybe undervalued. I don't know the drivers to that, but I think there's a view that there's probably a lot to unlock here. But I mean, that's easier said than done.
Do you think that the gaming industry is just such on an upswing? It's just going to fill that 25% and more? Or do you think the PE group is going to be like, we have an idea of how to fundamentally change the gaming industry, and we're going to like 10x this thing by doing this?
Well, I think it's less about the PE group themselves having the grand vision for that particular business. I think it's much more about like what does that leadership team and that group believe is possible, and what has been constraining them to realize that. And maybe the funding coming from these different PE groups in this deal maybe can help unlock some of that. Maybe it is expanding more into eSports, making kind of changing a paradigm. Who knows what kind of AI and virtual reality type of plays you can make with this kind of fundamental game. Don't know. A lot of possibilities. I look forward to kind of seeing it roll out and play out. This one will be tracked pretty closely, I think.
Do you think there are going to be downstream impacts to the PE space in general because of this? No.
Nah, I don't think so.
Business as usual.
Yeah.
Wait, it's just bigger business?
Just bigger business. Yeah.
I think, as Rory noted, and what might have been driving this, I think, is it's a lot of money that they're able to put to work. And sometimes it's difficult to find money, ways to put money to work. So that's a big chunk of money to work. And, even if they don't really hit away, it's better. Again, they're now collecting their their management fees. They've now, done the LP capital call. They've got the money put to work. The LPs might think this is a, sexy, high profile investment that they're now involved in. And so from a private equity perspective, obviously they want to get their good returns, but putting 55 billion to work, is that's a nice fee base right there.
Wow,
Yeah,
I didn't think about it that way.
exactly.
It could be like, "Hey, we gotta do something with this. It's just sitting there, so let's."
Yeah, we got commitment sitting here, and we might have, and we haven't found it. We can't string together enough small deals
Wow,
to
okay.
actually get that deployed. Well, let's put together a big splashy one, and that
Yeah,
that
I'd
do it.
be super interested to figure out like where did the initial motivation come from. I don't know if it was very much spearheaded by Saudi PIF and said, hey, we need a couple of, call it domestic backers to partner with us on this deal, for any number of reasons maybe.
Interesting.
But then what is the deal amongst those groups? Is there
Yeah.
economics being backstopped? Is there, structural things that make it so these particular group of lead investors came together on this particular deal? It's intriguing stuff. I don't know. We'll learn more, I'm
Just
sure.
out of curiosity, is this like a weird combination of PE investors, or it's like, no, like this is just you can hodgepodge these things together in a whole bunch of different ways. This is just one.
I have to admit, this is the first time I'd ever even known that Jared Kushner had
Same.
founded a
Yeah.
private
Okay.
equity firm. So that one I would maybe even speculate is more for Flash. I don't know. That's just me being speculative completely. Why would his firm get a seat at that big table?
Well,
You know,
yeah,
Father-in-law might help
connections.
with some
He's
of
I
got
was
the
that.
going to say,
connections.
yeah.
What
I mean, I
what
could, yeah, very
what
possibly.
things are you going to be looking for as this one rolls out? Like what? Oh, like that's interesting. Or ooh, okay, that's how they're doing that one. Interesting. What kind of things would you look out for?
Well, I'm going to
So
look out for, what happens with the business. Is it going to go do different, bigger stuff first and foremost? I think that's the biggest one for me.
yeah, I'm going to be looking for, the gaming community, and we're talking like the biggest gaming company or one of the biggest gaming companies in the
Yeah,
world. The gaming community is brutal and public, and they love to, there's
true.
message boards and
Yeah,
all that. So I'm curious to see over the next couple of years whether the increased debt service, whether the private equity purchase impacts their creativity and the gamer's experience, to where it goes to Rory's comment. I'm just being a little more specific that the business doesn't perform
mm,
the way it has historically, because instead of going like Rory had mentioned, well, this takes the quarterly pressures off and they're able to do things longer term. I will be curious to see if it doesn't go the other direction and the private equity guys kind of strangle it a little bit on the creativity and development side.
yeah, that's right.
And,
Yeah,
the folks who are current users of those products don't skate away somewhere else. So I'll be curious to see what the gamers' reaction is to this in another 24 months or so, once the current pipeline
yeah.
goes out and they've got to refill the pipeline with new product.
By the way, on that, we might have to wait a little while. I've read that the due to the big regulatory oversight on this one, deal might not even close till 2027 actually. So
Whoa,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
27. Why not?
So I don't have the specifics on it, but I can only imagine that this being the first of its kind and the biggest of its kind, it's going to have all sorts of both domestic and international eyes on it and
I feel
things
like,
like that.
in the
So
Jurassic Park movies where it's like T-Rex was like the biggest dinosaur. It's like, oh my gosh, T-Rex. And then they had the megalodon or
yeah,
whatever that eats the T-Rex. And then
yeah,
they had that one that jumps out of the water and eats the biggest. It's like,
yeah.
this is just going to get crazy. But yeah,
Yeah, I remember back in the day, like the RJR and Nabisco was just like mind blowing in terms of its size at the time. And this is, I mean, this is, deals are just getting
yeah,
so big.
yeah.
I mean, it just is. Look at some of our biggest public companies. I mean, they're literally $1 trillion valuations plus, and growing.
Quick hit exit questions
It's
for
insane.
you. How many years do you think this hold will be?
I'm going to say between 7 and 10 years.
I was right there with you. I was thinking 7
This
was
one's a little
first.
special, I think. It's going to be a longer duration, I think. Yeah.
Who do you think the next buyer will be?
I'd say the public.
Oh.
Yep. Public market. It'll be an IPO.
Yeah.
How much
Yeah.
money would you pay to be in the board meeting with all of those PE groups and the leadership meeting at EA?
They need to pay me. I could impart
right.
a lot of wisdom on this deal. I'm sure of it.
Yeah,
I'd at least like need a a coffee and a sandwich as compensation.
I think EA has been so corporatized over the last period of time, because they are a huge public company, that I think probably the board meetings will not be that much different under new ownership than they were under old ownership. So I especially with them being a public company, so I don't expect it's going to all of a sudden bean bags are going to be gone and we're going to have to sit at the conference table.
Any final thoughts on this one?
No, super, super interesting. I think this is one where probably people have seen a lot of headlines, and maybe this is something we can kind of break down a little bit. So hopefully the audience got a little something out of it.
Cautiously skeptical.
Skeptical.
There you go.
Well, cool. We saw that news article, wanted to break it down for our listeners, and we'll keep track of this one. So we might do kind of round 2, round 3, and see what unfolds. Thanks, Rory. Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.